Greetings, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar hosted by Online Rewards titled Building a Culture of Recognition, a look at monetary and non-monetary recognition techniques in a multi-generational workplace. First, a little bit about us. At Online Rewards, we are an international provider of custom employee recognition solutions. We have offices in the US and the UK, and we fulfill rewards all across the globe. We have a focus on programs designed to motivate and engage your staff in a meaningful, consistent, and sustainable manner. I'm Jim Schroeder. I'll be your moderator today. I'm a digital strategist here at Online Rewards, and I'm really happy to be with all of you. I hope you find today's session informative, enjoyable, and actionable. First, onto a couple quick housekeeping items. The duration of the webinar is 1 hour, so we intend to finish directly at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The format of the webinar will be 2 presentations with some interactive poll questions. And to conclude the webinar, there will be a question and answer session. So if you think of a question during either of the presentations, please feel free to post it to the question box at the bottom of your interface, and we'll save those until the end of the presentations. So first, to introduce our speakers today, the second of whom is Michael Levy. Michael is the CEO of Online Rewards, and he has been instrumental in the delivery of custom programs for over 400 companies. He is a respected industry speaker. He's dedicated to helping organizations improve employee engagement with the execution of industry-leading recognition programs. But this first speaker that you will hear today is Michael Rose. Michael is an independent reward consultant, including consultancy roles with Arthur Andersen and KPMG. He's also held a number of corporate roles, the last being Director of Reward for Aon UK and EMEA. He's an accomplished speaker and then author of over 3 books published, including A Guide to Noncash Reward, which is our subject matter today, employee recognition, and everyone in attendance today will be receiving a copy of that book. So I'm now going to pass it over to our first speaker, Michael Rose, and I believe he will start his presentation with a poll question.
Thanks very much indeed, Jim. It's very nice to be with everybody today. I'm sitting in London on a very sunny, pleasant sunny afternoon. So it's very nice here in London, and I hope it's good where you are. So as Jim said, we've got, I think, 3 polls just as we're going to go through this session today to break it up and see what people think about a few of the questions, and maybe that'll stimulate some interesting views as we get towards the end in the Q&A. So the first question that we've got is to ask you about for whom you think recognition is most important. And as you can see there, we've got those questions there. So what we'd like is everybody to click onto one of those. So the question is, for whom do you think recognition is most important? And we've given you 4 options: low-paid employees, employees in the service sector, most people working in any sector, or people if delivered in the right way. So please, if you could click on one of those, and then we'll just show some results. So just click on one of those, everybody, and then we'll see where we go.
Looks like all the results are in.
Okay. So, well, not necessarily surprising. Everybody's one of those last 2. And in fact, the reality, I think that probably is the answer. I mean, some people feel that it's specifically valuable for lower paid employees on the basis that more senior people get all sorts of other stuff. It's obviously very common in the service sector, but the reality from all the research that I've seen and worked on is that actually the reality is it's something for everyone, and it may look very, very different between a law firm and a fast food outlet, but the principles underpinning are very much the same. So interesting feedback. Thanks for that. So let's just talk about what is recognition. So that's my definition. It's a fairly long definition that comes out of my last book on the subject, the book that you'll get a copy of. And I suppose there's a couple of key things there. And maybe the most important is that not dependent on achievement against a given target or objective. And it's quite interesting how when I've looked at recognition programs or things that are meant to be recognition programs, actually what I find is some of them are objective-based, target-based, when we have to really differentiate between recognition, which is all about the praise and the activity around what people are doing, and the objectives-based, incentive-based plans. So the first thing we need to be clear about, and let's start to differentiate, is recognition is very different from reward and particularly incentives. Perhaps a much simpler definition is the next one on the slide, which doesn't seem to be pulling through, which is, there we go. I guess a number of people on the call may have come across this book. It's going back a way now, 1 Minute Manager. But I think ultimately, if we want to say what is recognition about in one simple phrase, catching people doing something right is a great phrase to think about. You know, interesting, the psychologists will tell us that to a large extent we are hardwired to find fault, to find those things that are wrong, to look at those things that need correcting. And it won't, I'm sure to many people on the call, you will identify managers who are particularly good at doing that. What recognition is about is to a large extent trying to counteract that, to say, actually, you know, people in organizations are doing a lot of great stuff, otherwise we wouldn't be successful. So let us celebrate and ensure that we are catching people doing something right. So for me, you know, whatever else anybody says about recognition, I think that's a great phrase to go forwards on. And certainly in the UK, one of the things that's driven, I think, recognition is around engagement. Now, this is something that I'm sure my American colleagues, Canadian colleagues, won't have come across, but a very interesting piece of work which was initiated by the UK government in 2009, and I thought very enlightened for a government, because they wanted to ask the question, which is to what extent does engagement impact key metrics in organizations? To what extent can we engage people more effectively and actually get some key financial results from that? And they initiated a review in 2009, and it's run by a guy called McLeod. And in fact, if anybody Googles McLeod Review UK 2009, you'll pick that up. And there's some very interesting evidence that they found, and they've continued with that piece of work. But the first section of the review, the report that comes out of that, covers a whole lot of data showing to us the significance of engagement. And there are just three little examples. You know, they found, based on some Gallup research, that businesses in the top half for engagement scores had 27% higher profitability. Standard Chartered, who've done a lot of work in this, found that the whole lot of metrics based on their branch effectiveness and metrics out of their branches, which correlate very directly with higher staff engagement, and there's just one example. And the third example I've just pulled out is organization which found, surprise, surprise, 78% of engaged employees recommended the company's products, but only 13% of the disengaged. Well, that's no great surprise, but there's some hard evidence, and as I say, you may want to Google that, and you'll pick up some other data. So first of all, I think that's an important thing to say is, you know, why is recognition so important? Well, let's start putting it in the context of engagement. So we've got a lot of data on engagement now. There's research from all over the world that shows us some correlations and probably causality between engagement and financial metrics. And the other piece I've put on that slide is the Gallup Q12. I imagine that many people on the call will be familiar with the Gallup Q12. Gallup have developed this series of 12 key questions, which they believe are the core determinants or factors of measuring engagement in an organization. And interestingly, of their 12 hugely well-researched program they've got, one of the 6 most powerful, they say, is the question about, you know, to what extent have I received recognition or praise for good work in the last 7 days? So clearly there's both evidence that engagement is significant, but also we're getting significant research that's showing us the impact of recognition as part of the engagement scenario within organizations. So if we look at the next slide, you know, there's some stuff around, you know, well, what does drive engagement? And we can kind of just run through this build slide, because, you know, what does drive engagement? Well, there's some research here that shows a whole load of different factors. Recognition is in there. There's recognition. There's reward. change management, performance management, leadership. These are some of the key 5 factors that one particular research program found. And we can identify a whole lot of different factors. And I suppose the only thing I want to say is that often when you look at drivers of engagement, recognition is there. And of course, one of the things that's critically important as we think about that is that, of course, the recognition piece is free. And again, if we look further and we think, to face validity on the next slide, we'll see that, what's the damage of poor recognition? Well, whatever level we think about recognition from a theoretical perspective, just look at this very simple quote. Here's somebody whose little statement based out of a piece of research a while back. Recently, we were very busy and a few of us worked a lot of hours to help out, but you didn't get any thanks for it. We're just not appreciated at work. If someone were looking for a job, I wouldn't tell them to get one where I work. Now, that's a piece of work out of a piece of work around, as you see, employee attitudes and engagement. Susan there is not asking for a bonus. She's not asking for time off. She's not asking for higher salary. All she's asking for is basic thanks. And that basic thanks costs nothing compared with bonuses and even time off and salary. So it's no great surprise but that that sort of reaction would come through. But in fact, what she's asking for is something that's completely free. It's not something that even you need to spend any money on. So let's say hopefully that I've kind of taken a position on recognition overall. Let's now just spend a moment talking about the relationship between recognition and reward on the next slide. Now, I've just given one slide here, which is an organization, well, that's the intro slide, but one slide British Airways have put together from a while back now, a very simple, neat, punchy way of trying to differentiate between what they saw as reward, incentives, and recognition. And I'm not advocating this as the perfect definition by any means. It's simply what they did is said, look, we have got these different pieces here, and we need to tell our people to make sure that it's clear what each is about. And in my view, and I work on strategic reward across a whole range of different organizations, people frequently don't think enough about the differentiation between these component pieces, and we do have to distinguish between reward, be it pay or incentives, basic pay or incentives, and recognition. And recognition is all about the message. Recognition is about the praise, and what I've found very often is if you give recognition to the reward guy, then what you typically get is the reward solution, and people end up looking at recognition through a reward lens, and often that the recognition piece emphasizes the tangible outcomes, the prizes, whereas it's much closer to a learning and development a piece. And certainly when I did a piece of work doing around some case studies on recognition programs, I spoke often with the reward person, maybe the HR person in an organization. And one of the things I asked about as I was talking about, tell me about your recognition program, I asked the question, well, tell me about how does recognition feature within your learning and development? How does it feature within training of your managers, your team leaders? Where does it feature in any of that stuff? And commonly, and I found this pretty shocking actually, commonly people either didn't know, so the person I was talking to who runs the recognition program in the organization didn't know how it featured in training, or they might say it didn't. Sometimes it did, and it was great. But if we want to make change in an organization, we have to take a holistic approach. And if you just shove recognition simply to the reward guy and you don't attend to the other components that are going to make a meaningful impact, then I think you're missing a huge trick. So I think one of the big differences between reward, be it pay or incentives, and recognition is that the pay piece is very much the kind of contractual stuff. It's the stuff about the actual, I come to work, I have to be paid, and so on and so forth. And recognition, on the other hand, is much more about the thank you, the gift, the social component. So let's just spend a minute or two talking about this generational issue from this this next slide. So, we've always had to deal with generational issues in organizations, but it's only in the recent past that it's become a particular issue that we need to start to attend to. And the reason, of course, is because of technology. And we know that if we look at, and it's particularly the millennial group, or theory, it's Generation X into Y and then Y millennial, which is the particular group that a lot of people are thinking about. And what I've done on this slide is just put together a number of different characteristics which seem to me to pop up in a lot of the research, and they seem to be the 7, if you like, key differentiators on the millennial group and the key characteristics. So if we just look at these, and we can just run through the whole list of the 7, and I thought, well, let's just think about that in recognition terms, because the reality is, these people do look for different things. So first of all, and there are the 7 key factors that I kind of come across. Tech savvy and connected, very obviously, and actually, whilst many people would want to have face-to-face and handwritten recognition, actually, the millennials very happy with technology. I looked at a case study in a cell phone business, and they delivered all of their recognition messages through the phones to their employees in the shops, and the shops were typically 18 to 25-year-olds who were very happy to receive messages that way, because that's the way they communicated. So we should certainly be looking at technology to deliver, and that seems to be pretty obvious. The second one, craving feedback. There is this need for effective performance management, but it's effective recognition as well. So I think organizations need to look at feedback systems, performance management systems, but clearly recognition has a place there. I think the meaning not just work is pretty obvious. There's very much this work-life balance piece. Maybe this generation is very much work to live, not live to work. And certainly one of the things it says to us about that is maybe using time off as an award is something for this group of people, or experiences. Those certainly are things that would seem to resonate with this newer group. And the next point, and probably the other one that I want to make particularly comment on, is this team-orientated and collaborative. We do emphasize a lot individual recognition, and that's critically important. But actually, I think maybe this group are starting to be more interested in thinking of themselves as part of a team to achieve results. And maybe we should attend to thinking around team experiences, team celebration, team recognition as well. And I suppose what is that saying? Well, first of all, it's saying we probably do need to think about this group slightly differently. But it's always been the case that we should think about the way we deliver recognition to be different for the different people, because we've got individuals in our organizations, and we should attend to what is right for the individual, because to the extent to which recognition is individual, then we should make certain that we are delivering appropriately for them. And I suppose what it says to me is that we should be thoughtful about the way we set up our recognition approach, and highly centralized programs which simply deliver one mechanism to a group of people is less impactful perhaps now with this generation than it would have been in the past, and we need to be more thoughtful about the way in which we structure such programs. Maybe we'll pick up any of those points in the questions. So my general approach to recognition programs is on the next slide, where I think of it very much as a continuum. And as we can see as we build this slide, it is a continuum because it kind of goes, in my view, from the informal through to the formal. And if we look at what's under each of those components, what we can see is the informal is really the day-to-day. It's day-to-day as in just kind of saying thank you, not very much more than that. We can then build into maybe some informal, local, low-key, simple programs, and ultimately we may choose to get into the kind of final block, which is the corporate, formal, more high-profile. Now, I would say, as the next slide, the next point shows, is that we should be starting on the left-hand side, not the right. And it seems to me that when I look at the way organizations think about recognition, it seems to go like this. We're not recognizing our people enough. Maybe it's coming through from the engagement score. Therefore, we need to put in a recognition program. Therefore, we start with a big corporate central high-profile program. Now, maybe you go to that, but I would suggest actually what we should do is start on the left-hand side, just building behavioral change around the people delivering simple recognition messages, and then maybe build up. And it's very common to have a number of programs, but it seems to me you must start on the left, you mustn't start on the right. You start on the right, you're missing a trick by reinforcing the critical role of the local managers. The one of the short point to make is this about what I see as the mechanism. And I think we should be using non-cash, not cash. And there are 4 main reasons. You can read about this stuff in the book. Perceived value, and a gift can certainly have a higher perceived value than cash. It can certainly be more personal. Cash is great, but it's impersonal. And if you get the gift right and it accords to what the individual's after, you can make it very personal, and that's great. Differentiation is critical. Pay is around what you're doing for work. It's about achieving goals and so on. And if you put just cash in for recognition, you can often confuse both managers and recipients. And I've seen many programs with high cash awards, and they end up getting used for the wrong reason. I've seen them being used where, for example, pay reviews are low, and therefore people start using the recognition program to push cash into people. It's got nothing to do with recognition. So I would argue that gifts should be relatively low value and certainly not cash. And of course, memory value. You're not going to tell people about your paycheck, but your bonus, but you may certainly talk to them about having dinner out with your partner. May talk to them about getting a camera, getting a day off. Any of that stuff, and you can remember what it is that you achieve to get that. And as we'll see in the next slide, actually, the other thing is, what do people do with cash anyway? Okay, well, this is going back a little while, but World at Work research. But look at that. The top 3, what do people do with cash awards? Paid bills, couldn't remember. Some people never even received it. So you've got 62% of people in those categories before you get into anything that looks at all exciting. So, if you want recognition to have impact and you want to give some sort of tangible award, then I would advocate very strongly giving a non-cash award that's relevant, not cash. And so let me just give you a simple example. Think about a high-paid person in your organization. I don't know the organizations that are on the call today, but if I think in UK terms, let's say I'd be talking about somebody earning £300,000, let's call it $500,000. That's a high-paid person, right? So we wouldn't give that person a $200 bonus. Well, you might, but it's not going to go down well. I worked with organizations in the City of London, and you could give a £500,000 bonus and people could still treat it with contempt. But you certainly wouldn't give somebody earning $500,000 a $200 bonus. But what happens if we change it? What happens if we replay that? And what happens if we think about it differently? So instead of giving a $200 bonus, we give them a gift. We give them a gift and a handwritten note from the chief executive thanking them. And as you can see, this next slide, it could be any gift. It depends what it is. In the UK terms, I might think about a bottle of champagne. It may be any kind of gift, but it's something that just says, thank you. Here's a gift to say thank you. It is not replacing bonus. Let's be clear. I am not saying you do this instead of bonus. All I'm saying is, my experience tells me when I talk to people, when they've had that recognition from the chief executive, maybe with a little gift, they will talk to me about that, and that is still something they'll remember long after the bonus was forgotten. And look at the value proposition there. So last kind of meaningful slide, summary, and again, you'll pick up these points in the book, but here's a little summary of a few key points about how we should deliver recognition. If you don't mean it, don't say it. You need to train people in this stuff, but it's got to be meaningful. Make it timely, make it as close to the event as you can. I did a piece of work a while back in the UK for a public sector organization, and I was reviewing their recognition program, and the longest time between somebody achieving something or doing something that was recognized and receiving the gift, or it actually was cash in those times, 18 months. Incredible. But make it timely, make it as close as you can. Be personal, use the person's name, be very explicit, be personal about what the individual has done. Make it specific, so refer to exactly what they did. be clear, explain why it's appreciated, and make it public in the right way. Yeah, it doesn't need to be on notice boards, it doesn't need to be on billboards, it doesn't need to be on neon lights, but make it public in the team meetings. But make people other people aware. So that's my main summary. Let's just go into my second and final question for you guys, the poll, and then I'll give you one last slide, and then I'll hand over to Michael. And so, it's okay. You've heard a lot of stuff I've said. I've said a number of different things. You'll take a view. So look at this. What do you believe are the most effective motivators for employees? I haven't used the word motivation. I've used the word engagement, but motivators or ways of engaging people. There are 5 options. What do you think in your organization, from your experience? What do you believe are the most effective motivators for employees? Click one of those 5, please. See where we go. So what have we got? Well, praise from immediate manager, leadership attention, chance to lead project, interesting. Some people cash bonus, nobody stock options. And I mean, really interesting, actually, that first one is certainly what the evidence tells us. I mean, all the research tells us that. It is praise from immediate manager, the most impactful, and that's quite clear is the case. So that's certainly what the research reinforces. Okay, that's very interesting, those top 3 that you said. Maybe we're kind of loading this in the direction that you might expect. But let me just go on to my last slide, which summarizes some of this. And if we go on to the last slide, that's the piece of research that McKinsey put out a little while back. McKinsey, as we know, pretty hard-nosed strategy consultancy, and look what they found. Praise from immediate manager, leadership attention, or chance to lead projects was equal to or more effective than those bottom 3 in motivating people. So pretty important, pretty significant. So we and the other critical thing, of course, is none of those things at the top cost any money. It's not either or. We're still going to pay people bonuses. We may increase base pay. We may give stock and stock options. That's not either or. But look at the impact you can make from those top 3. Okay, great. Well, thanks for your attention on that. Let me pass over to Michael Levy, and then we'll pick up some Q&A at the end.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Michael Rose, Jim Schroeder for organizing logistically, Mike Rose for being open to do this. For attendees, as a way of reference, Michael referred to one of his books. He has a number of books as a way of saying thank you for coming and attending. We'll make sure we get copies of his book that talks about the cash versus merchandise questions, as well as some other topics to everybody. I think we've got your address information, but if not, we'll reach out to you post that. So I'm going to add a little perspective on the question of recognition and is cash the right and versus, and how to deal with millennials in a context of what we find in the US situation with both our clients and generally, what we're picking up in the industry in terms of, what's HR talking about? What is this recognition? How does it link to engagement? What are some of the factors affecting it? So that one can consider, well, what are really some of the options ahead if we're trying to make sure our organization is applying best practices and doing the best that we can with the available resources to try and deliver some, results and outcome. And the general theme, and I think you're going to hear more about it, at industry events and literature, so forth, is the transition from, tactical execution, meaning tick the box, we have a service award program. Tick the box, we have some peer-to-peer recognition. Tick the box, we've got now some spot award. To, all right, how does this all become strategically interconnected to, achieve a result, the result being employees, feel they're having a natural and authentic experience working for your organization. They've been asked to give themselves to the companies to help the companies grow and achieve the goals and objectives for the benefit of the companies and their stockholders and stakeholders, etc. And in exchange for that, the company's supposed to say, I'm going to look after you, I'm going to do the best I can for you, and I want to create experiences that encourage you to give the best that you can. That, in the essence, is where this conversation is going to go, and what I predict you're going to see and read a lot more about, in industry and papers. So let's put it into a simplistic model reminder. Some of these things we're sharing with you are things you already know. Sometimes it's nice to put these in a higher priority on the stack list of what's on your desk and what are the initiatives that you've got going on. You've got your HRIS systems and you've got your reorg, all that's happening in the background. We're reminding you in this conversation and dialogue that pursuing strategic recognition initiatives should be a high priority, for it's one of the cheapest pursuits to deliver the biggest impact, in terms of results and outcomes. So why is it so? Well, let's look at how you create revenue and profitability, the value creation models defined by Harvard Business Review. This simplistic model, will share again parts of this deck with you. We're happy to do so. I think this is a great slide. How do we create internal service quality for an organization? Right? How do we get the quality of our service and experience and products up there? Well, we've got to have happy employees. If we have happy employees, they stay. If they stay, generally they're more productive, i.e. require less training, but further because they're being encouraged to be more productive and give their best. If they stay and they're productive and they're engaged, they deliver external service, meaning the quality of the customer experience. Think Starbucks, that experience you have when you're getting coffee. If we have a good service model, producing good product, customers are happy, customers stay, customers spend more money, drive profitability. What things can we affect? Right? The only things that organizations can affect are the internal side, employee satisfaction, impacting retention and their productivity to deliver a service value. We can't control customer satisfaction or loyalty or revenue growth or profitability. We can only control what are within our domains. So this is a strategic imperative, and it's somewhat of a reminder. And in case you'd forgotten, 11 billion in lost revenue each year across the United States Bureau of National Affairs. Why? Well, because 40% of people in 2013 left their job within the first 6 months. Depending on the industry you're in, your cost of replacement could be anywhere from $60,000 to $120,000 per person. Sometimes I hear questions being asked about, well, what's the business rationale and case for why we should be engaging, connecting with our employees? I'm like, are you crazy? The money that companies are bleeding because they can't keep their talent is ridiculous. And the business case to the CFO and CXO is easy. 16% of employees, had they stayed on for the first 6 months, will they leave anyway in the next 12 months? You got good engagement. You got a good recognition program. According to Deloitte, 31% lower turnover rate than those don't. This is a strategic priority and one that should be on 2016-27 calendar priority, not like, oh yeah, sometime we'll get our HRIS system working. All that. I'm like, well, whatever, but you're burning money. So what have we been doing, over the last, decade and for longer? Well, we've said, well, I know how we'll fix it. We'll develop programs. We'll have these programs for people. We'll have summer picnics and award catalogs for tenure and service award, and then we'll get our safety program going with our walking program, our Employee of the Month program. We've got some departmental incentives, maybe some referrals, maybe a quarterly awards dinner, maybe biannual awards. How about holiday parties? You have a wellness program. Oh, no, yeah, we'll get a manager spot award. That'll fix it. Sales incentives. I'm sure. I'm sure all that fixes it. Now, of course, we understand why it got to this point, because over time there were tactical initiatives that flowed down, maybe from the CHRO, or it's the case. We need to have one of these things because the company that I worked at before used to have one of these. We don't have one of those. We should get one. Okay, well, we'll give it to Jenny. Jenny's quite new in the HR team. She can create one of those programs. So Jenny's like, oh, I've been here 6 months. Okay, I guess I'll create one of these programs. And new programs created. We put a committee for them. We've got a committee for the service awards, we've got a committee for the wellness, we've got the committee for the quarterly awards, we've got the committee for that. So what happens to an employee for whom we want them to be engaged? What do we want from an HR perspective, looking at the most expensive part of the organization? 70% of the cost of an organization is labor. We want them to be engaged. So we create all these great programs because these programs engage them. And the more programs we have, the more engaged they must be, except the result is that, which is, oh my gosh, what are all these programs? Do I even know what they are? How do they all sort of align and connect together to create some experience? Right? Because what often tends to happen, as the Dilbert cartoon correctly says, I want your opinions. I'm doing this thing corporately for you because I think this is the right thing to do. I've created this program. Why? Because it's an engagement program. It's supposed to make you feel engaged. And then, of course, the employees look at leadership and go, really? And, of course, management says, well, I hope it looks like that to you, but not really walking through the footsteps of the other side of the equation. So the big E, we're all pursuing this, the terminology to basically say we want the people that work with us to give the best that they possibly can, that when they wake up in the morning and they come to work to join us, they all have lives, they all have children, they all have parents, or depending, they all have the challenges and realities of the world, as we all do on this telephone today. But when we step into the work setting or environment, we are really, from an HR and a leadership standpoint, saying we at least want to get them to give the best that we can, and we're calling that engagement, right? And we're calling it, we, as Online Rewards say, it's the big E of engagement. It's what does it really mean, to have a person, heart and mind, at least doing the best, not all the time, but as much as they possibly can. So it's not difficult to determine what the key variables are that affect that, of an employee's perception of what affects them on a day-to-day and how they, as a function of time and commitment and contribution to an employer, experiences their work. They've got training and development, they've got their immediate management interactions, performance and appraisal, communication. They want to be treated fairly, they want good pay and benefits, health and safety. They want to work collaboratively with their employees, want it to feel like it's a family-friendly organization, job satisfaction. So these are the ones that recognition can directly affect. Relationship between the immediate manager, yep, that's influenced by recognition. Communication, yes, how we interact, we should encourage more frequent communication, general communication, and then, of course, communication regarding job performance. We've seen all the big accounting firms, as the leaders begin to remove their performance appraisal programs as these annual formal structured things because they were dysfunctional in the beginning, or times have changed, and so they're becoming dysfunctional now. So it's that ongoing. Health and safety, that's certainly around recognition. Cooperation, that's facilitated by recognition or supported. Without a doubt, family friendliness for informal recognition to produce job satisfaction. So these are the things from an employee standpoint perspective impact their engagement and is a direct byproduct, or at least recognition has a role to play. So what companies tend to do, however, is have all these different programs that they've put in place. They might have recognition programs. I predict that everybody on the call is doing things. Some are formal, some are structured. But do they tie together, or are they just these separate deployments? And the big opportunity that a lot of US companies and HR, as you're going to hear me further articulate, has this fantastic opportunity to begin to say, what is the accumulation of these programs impact on the employee experience? What are they? Are they all good? And how do they interconnect to do that? Because I predict that the word culture is also going to be thrown around a lot more in this period. It comes and goes in waves. But the manifestation of these various things that we do as employers for our employees cumulatively produce an environment which defines the culture in conjunction with the values and the objectives and the mission and the way people behave with each other. And recognition, obviously, up the top has a very big role to play because it sort of sets the scene. Many of these others are sort of more mechanical, but aligned, they become progressively more powerful. And if anybody had any uncertainty, you just need to look at the Gallup data to show you how significant when you have a good engagement environment can be across the key financial drivers of an organization. So now is like the super big question. everybody's been nodding probably for most of the time on the call. Some stuff they know, some might be a new perspective. Again, I'm reminding of the importance and significance and how to build the business case. Question is, who owns this responsibility? And I've thought about this a lot, and is it operations? And sometimes is there a financial interest because finance has, but no matter which way we look at this, HR is going to own this. Partly because they're in the position whereby they've got, interaction, dotted lines between all parts of the organization, but also because all of the other departments are going to basically point to this as an HR thing anyway. So there's not a question that HR has to take some ownership and responsibility, but by doing so, they can potentially position themselves well as a more significant voice on board and strategic direction for the organization. And I think there's been a period of time for which HR has been lessened in terms of the strength and quality of their voice and the sound of their voice in the C-suite, driven predominantly by finance because of the quarterly impacts, quarterly public reporting impacts, and the fact that most CEOs and boards are driven predominantly by finance, and finance is taking much more often a shorter-term view of things. Again, from company to company, it changes. But this slide is to say, who's responsible for the outcome? HR. HR might say, well, everybody's thinking short-term. I'm like, maybe they are, but they're not going to be thinking short-term for too much longer. There's only so far that you go. Here's BlackRock. He's the CEO. I don't know if you know who BlackRock is. Probably most of you do, but if you don't, it's the largest investor in the world. They are the behind-the-scenes infrastructure investing companies. What's the letter that Larry Fink, the CEO, sends out? We're asking that every CEO laid out for shareholders each year a strategic framework for long-term value creation. What does long-term value creation mean for an organization that has 70% of expenses tied to HR? It means get the best return, if it takes a bit longer, from 70% of the money that you spend. So this is the reminder to finance and the CEO and the board that, okay, well, yes, we understand we've got quarterlies, but we're going to have to recognize sooner or later that we're spending a lot of money that's affected, that's in the turnover. And we also know that the development and the quality of our products and services and our ability to innovate is a direct function of our people. They're the ones that make it all happen. So this is a strategic imperative. So what's the thing to do beyond just say, okay, this is the important imperative, or it's a strategic objective that should be in the what, 1, 2, or 3 position, is to say, we need to move from tactical to strategic. We need to recognize that our environment, when I say our environment, is HR leadership, talking and working with the other parts of the organization. This is what's happening inside organizations. They're all talking about engagement. Everything's moving towards performance-driven projects. We've got to have the C-suite involved, because if the C-suite involved, nothing's really going to happen anyway. It'll all just be lip service. We need things to align around our culture and the values, for which we spent a lot of money defining what our values are, and we put them in PowerPoint presentations. We spent a lot of, well, how do you bring them to life? We need to look at how to bring all the various programs somewhat together so that they feel to an employee that they were consolidated. We need it to drive innovation. Got to recognize that we've got a digital and multi-generational workplace, and building internal brands helps impact the talent acquisition. And so we want to create an internal brand. What does it mean to work for our particular companies? So how people are doing that, I'm just going to show some brief examples, is they're beginning to leverage recognition as a baseline against which they can look at other things. If you look at this sort of brief slide, you've got, soft things happening here, sort of anniversaries, birthdays, storytelling, e-cards, top employees. They're beginning to build an internal brand to create positive experiences for employees. This organization is taking leadership into the equation by creating dashboards specifically for the executive levels so that the program performance and activities are transparent. There's the bringing the C-suites into the experiences. This client is pushing heavily on aligning of the values and making the values interesting and bring them to life, so that they're not values in a PowerPoint presentation that was discussed amongst the C-suite that they all sound good. No, it's actually touching people all the way through. This organization is now bringing sales objectives and sales targets and recognizing for that. Doesn't say anything about prizes, doesn't even say anything about cash actually. It's saying, we're going to recognize you for performance, we're going to make it fun, and we're going to link it to some of our other recognition activities, so it creates a consistent message. We recognize you for your quantitative results, we recognize you for your qualitative results. This organization is aligning around pillars of health and well-being. We want you to be healthy. We know if you're healthy and you're strong emotionally, you're going to give the best that you can to us. This organization is looking for contributions and bringing idea submission and employee referrals, again in conjunction with recognitions. The examples for all of these, and I know I've flicked through them fairly quickly, and the commonality amongst them is they're all aligning multiple programs under common frameworks. They can be with different vendors, that's not the issue. It's just that they are beginning to say, we need to create a common theme and message in the way we do this, because at the baseline, I want to challenge you all to think about, if you're looking at everything that's available and done in your organizations, there is a lot of amazing things. Right, that's certainly available. The question becomes, how does the employee know about them all, and where do they all sit, and do they all fit together? We ask you to challenge all of our clients to say, think about this. Performance and productivity is the #1 objective that we have for all our employees. Fair enough, that's what drives the organizations. 2, and closely thereafter, if you're not well, if you're not in good shape, if you're not looked after, you don't have the capacity to do the job in the way that we want you to do it. So we care about how you are. There's our health and wellness programs. 3, we want you to grow and develop and evolve, because you aren't going to be the same person for all your life. You'll grow and develop. So how do we as an organization look at that? There's our training. And finally, we want you to contribute to making this a positive place to work, because if you make a positive place to work, other people will want to work here, and the people that are already working here will want to stay. We see those as the 4 pillars, and then we begin to say to clients, how do you begin to align all these things that you're doing so that they reflect consistency in the messaging? And if you do that, again, with a strong focus from a recognition bend, because as Mike Rose opened this up with, recognition's pretty cheap, irrespective of whether there's some monetary awards added to the thing as well. So it becomes a nice tall flag, so to speak, in the strategy around which these other elements can connect to. So I'll ask you as a final poll, in lieu of what I've said, to consider how is your approach? What's your environment? Is it strategic, where all of it is tying together in a unified framework and vision to create a consistent set of messages? Or is it a series of tactical programs that are sort of being deployed hodgepodge over here and over time by different communities and groups, which may have some consistent messaging, but no one's ever really brought it together to say these things all need to fit together? So I'll pass the poll over, and then we'll go back to you, Jim, for questions and answers. Thank you.
Looks like we've got about 85% of people have voted, so I'm going to go ahead and share the results there. Like about 71% said that their current environment is tactical, and then 29% said strategic. Any commentary on that from Michael Levy or Michael Rose?
Well, for Michael Rose, I'd just say that that's actually more strategic than I would have expected, as in most organizations are highly tactical. So that's the balance I'd expect in most populations. Maybe even, as I say, more tactical and less strategic commonly.
Sure. All right. Well, thanks again to Michael Rose and Michael Levy for their presentations. I think that was some great information, including aggregation of data and some case studies. So we'll go ahead and take some of the questions that we've received. The first question that I've received is this comes from Frank, and Frank asks, how do you frame engagement to executive leadership? And I think that we saw a lot of the data points covering the urgency of it, but when you're actually getting to that point where you're presenting this, how do you frame this to executive leadership?
Yeah. Well, certainly the way I do it is actually by using very solid research data, and I've given a little bit of that on there. And the critical component for me on engagement is, and it's for the C-suite, is not engagement for its own sake, but what have we got what can we do in our organization that will make a difference? And Michael Levy spoke about on that slide about those things that we can do internally. And engagement is very much about making impact in terms of financial and non-financial measures. And there is very clear evidence to demonstrate that. And you know, we in organizations should always be looking to make decisions based on evidence. In the HR world, there is evidence, there is research, and it's hard-nosed. It's not always easy, but it's very much based on what organizations are doing and finding. And you know, I'm working with organizations around reward, and relatively simply, you can fund some additional work on other things by a very small cost to payroll or a very small reduction in bonus. And you know, critically, if we're looking at a bonus plan, for example, I'm often finding myself saying to an organization, you know, guys, if we took a slice of that bonus plan and did something else with it, I think you get much better leverage for the money in terms of change that you want to make. So very business focused, very change orientated, very research based, very evidence based.
Great. This question, I believe, Michael Levy, you can speak to this. This might be from more of a program build, tactical question. This comes from Dawn. What are your recommendations for recognizing remote employees as they won't benefit from office-based events?
So Dawn, it's great question. So obviously we can't move them around logistically, or we can't do so viably. So we then have to challenge ourselves with, well, how do we make them feel engaged and connected? So in a world in which most of a large percentage of our employees, particularly those in probably remote situations, are connected digitally to the world, and they're spending a large portion of their time and their perception looking at the world through the eyes of a 14-inch by 14-inch screen. So one can still achieve a lot in terms of recognition and participation and culture building, providing that you've got a dynamic and interesting environment in which they can go and spend some time in. The amount of time that people are worse in Facebook exploring and participating and connecting with families is a demonstration of that. But why, and here's the key for a lot of our clients, when we come to them, we come to them the first time and they're like, oh, we've got an engagement program and we do sort of peer-to-peer recognition. And I look at their stuff, and in the nicest way possible, it's hopeless. It's a joke. It's a joke in the context of how does it compare to the user experiences that the populations are expecting to have when they're in the world of Facebook and or LinkedIn, which are extremely content-rich, interactive, interesting and fun, fast and responsive, communicative, got little gamey elements that sort of come along. People come to us and say, well, we've got sort of something like that, and I look at it and I'm like, that's like an email system with a form hanging off the back of some other application that was built that probably nobody even knows exists. Meaning, if you wanted to create experiences for remote employees in particular, well, you better have really cool, great tools that do it, because Facebook's success is not because it was an idea that had not been there before. It was because they did it so well. It was the quality of execution in that case. So you can achieve a lot, is the first comment. In order to do so, it's got to be fun and engaging and interesting, that people are going to want to use these tools to participate. And what are they participating? They're receiving some recognition. They can give some recognition. They can see others being recognized. They feel they're part of a family and a construct. albeit that we can only do it through a 14-inch by 14-inch screen. Well, that's their world, and that's the benefit that they get from being at home, and the burden is that they don't get the human interaction. So we've got to do the best we can with what we've got.
Excellent. So another question that Tom asks is, and I think this kind of speaks to where we were showing all of the other HR initiatives going on, how does a recognition program fit in with all those other HR initiatives?
Let me just say, I mean, it's a really interesting question because, you know, the critical thing that, and I talked about this, the holistic nature of change, and it is one of those things that first of all needs to be recognized within the HR community as not just one part of the piece. So I talked about recognition often sits with the reward people. You know, I think we're in a complex world, and while the reward expertise needs to be very deep and significant around what's going on in the environment in which one's working, actually you also need people to look holistically across the piece. So I'm looking for say the reward people, the learning and development people, maybe the resourcing people, to keep on working together and looking at this stuff collectively. So I see recognition, for example, linking in with performance management. It's part of the feedback loop. I see it as part of the learning and development. I see it as part of the what's in the manager kit bag. You know, how do we want people to manage in this organization and lead in organization? It could be part of the value proposition. You know, where does recognition, you know, catching people doing something great, how does that fit within that? So what it isn't, it seems to me, is part of the reward program. So it's not about incentives, it's not about pay. But I think what many organizations need to do, and in HR communities, is actually map out what are the relationships between the different pieces of HR. And so rather than just say, you know, HR stuff is all about recruit, retain, and motivate, actually some things do some things better than others. And what we need to do is do some mapping to say, you know what, this bit of HR has greatest impact here, this piece has greatest impact there. And what we shouldn't do is actually, just as Michael Levy was saying, you know, just have all of these disconnected programs without thinking strategically. So the final point I'd make is, you know, what we have to do is we have to look at all of our HR programs, and we have to ask ourselves a simple question: what is this doing for us? Or we could say, what's it about? And we really need to dive down and ask ourselves some simple questions about these programs. What is it for? And many organizations build this stuff up without asking that question.
Great. Thank you, Michael. So it looks like our time is about up. So we received a couple other questions, and any questions that we have not answered in this session, we will respond to those individually via email. So I just want to say, on behalf of Online Rewards, thanks to everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend today. We hope you found the content both informative and actionable. Feel free to contact us with any additional questions you have that may have come out of today's session. I also want to note that we will be sending, a couple people have asked for a copy of the slides. We will be sending you a link to an on-demand version of the webinar, so you'll be able to view the slides that way. And also, as mentioned before, Michael Rose's book, A Guide to Non-Cash Reward, will be sent to everybody who attended the live session today. And we have your addresses from the form you completed, so we'll follow up with you if anything additional is needed there. And I'll be making direct contact with some of you for some feedback on the webinar and so on. So I hope everyone has a very successful second half of 2016, and thanks again for your attendance today. Goodbye.